All right, guys, I've got some time for get out of this guy's way. But immigration and the legal stuff and the illegal stuff. Um, this has happened before, and there's a point that I didn't actually learn about until I moved to Oregon, to Portland, Oregon, and I got a lot of questions about the homelessness situation. This is before the pandemic. Um, So homelessness has always been an issue. I don't have the statistics on how big of an issue it always has been and then how bad it got. I know what it looked like visually, and I know what it looked like when my car got broken into because it was downtown and I left one thing inside the vehicle. So there's how the city manages its population, and then there's um, where those people come from. And this is really important because this is what Trump touched on when he was deporting these immigrants. He's like, hey, there's rapists, killers, and everything, and they're being sent over here from other countries. That actually happens here with our prisons and our own states and cities. And how it starts, it really starts with, say you're in a really cold climate and you're homeless and you're on drugs. They could give you housing, they could keep you inside, but they can't force you to stay inside. And these people just go out and they'll die on the streets. So they send them to a more temperate climate. And in fact, Hawaii is dealing with this. If you want to Google this, people will fly them out there and say there's homeless services out there in Hawaii, and they send them there because they know that they can't come back because it's an island. They got to save up money and get a plane ticket and whatnot. So another way that this happens is, say you have crime, you've got homelessness, they're out on the streets. Businesses who pay the taxes say, hey, you're supposed to deal with this. We're paying for this. And the fastest, easiest way for the city to deal with it is give them all a bus ticket and send them somewhere else. And cities, especially in Texas, Phoenix, Arizona, man, it's an exchange. It's just like, we can't really, if you throw money at it, start a nonprofit, that nonprofit ends up, a lot of money flows through there, and they don't want that money to stop, so they end up making the problem worse so they get more money. And it's just, you have a large amount of money sitting there, or you're going to attract people who just want a lot of money. And it's hard to protect yourself. There's also any kind of nonprofit, it's too easy to launder money through it because they can't, if you have making an anonymous donation, you can't audit that. Like, you can't find out who that is. So it kind of makes them a target. So I don't know how that used to be really prolific. I don't know how prolific that is now. But another thing that happens is prisons. The population there, I think they have an option to go somewhere else. And usually some of these prisons are in small town areas. There's really nothing there for the prisoners when they get out. So I guess they give them an option to go somewhere else, and a lot of them will go to a place that they've heard about, and different places will have a reputation built up, and Portland was one of those places, and that's changed a little bit. But their friends go there, they say, well, I don't have anywhere else to go, I'm just going to go where my friend did, and that's how that happens. And another way this happens is, actually, I think that's about it. Yeah. The easiest, most efficient way to do it is to just send them somewhere else. Oh, one more thing. This is a natural progression, like your first knee-jerk reaction. If you're a cop or you're a sheriff, I've actually had a couple of people tell me, like, we see guys that we don't want around, and we say, hey, where do you want to go? We'll give you some money. So it's not really, it doesn't even have to be an official way to deal with it. It's just there are no real good options. And these people, if they walk into a hospital, I don't think you can really turn them away based on whether or not they have any money. You also have the pill pandemic. Um, these the hospitals, the way they're run, isn't helping the situation. So somebody has to pay for those bills, and I think it's the city that does it. Like if you get an ambulance, we did a nonprofit run, and we went from one end of the United States to the other. And the first thing they wanted to know was, do you have a chase vehicle? So if somebody got injured, we were doing this walk. We actually walked from one end to the other. It was a little weird, but they wanted to know that we, one, had insurance that covered us no matter what state we were in, and that was a little difficult to get. And they also wanted to know if we get injured, we're not going to get an ambulance and then not pay that bill, and the city have to pay it. It might work different ways in different places. So, and if you're just traveling around the United States and you're broke and your car breaks down, you were trying to make it home, most cities, if you go through the police station, they'll have a fund set aside to help you get where you're going to go. Because not just because they don't want you there, it's just that's not where you want to be either. It's just a bad situation, so they help you move on. Another thing that affects homelessness is bigger cities. If you go through a small city and then you go through a big city and you're like, this one's clean and this one's not, it's not just because they're bad at managing people. It's just big cities attract more people. If you don't really have much, if you want more opportunity, you're not going to go to, Katy, Texas, say. It is not going to happen. It's not going to cross your mind. They did a survey here in Portland as far as to where these people were coming from, and actually the biggest deal was the price of rent. So the best way that they can really help homelessness is to build the infrastructure. I mean, they can give out a lot of free food, they can give it a lot of free stuff, but unless you have that infrastructure there where you can get jobs, where you can, there's stuff to actually buy, there's places where you can afford to live. If you don't build that infrastructure up, it doesn't matter how much you help people. There's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere to go but down, I guess. So different countries, once they heard that people were being allowed in, I think it was for votes, because that's happened before. There's this Netflix show called Wild Country, and it was about a religious group that came into Oregon, and they started taking in the homeless because they could vote, and they won. They won something just because they had the numbers. And but the worst of the worst, those are the first people they're going to send, and they're not going to fight it. It's like, I could be here where I have a bad reputation, or I could go up to New York where I can hide, where there's money, victims. Even if they want to do better, this is probably a better place to do it than their home country. There's just so much going on here. So is Trump eventually going to just, like South Park said, rape all the Mexicans? I don't know. He might. But the state that our country is in as a reputation for, if you're in a city and you've got a job there. I've talked to actually somebody who, she was a commissioner or something like that, and she was setting up a program for the homelessness, and there was a couple of things that she mentioned that she missed, and I was able to kind of help her with this. Is one, when you start giving out free food, if you do it during certain times of the day, the homeless have two options. They can either work and miss out on that food, or they can not work and get that food. And usually the free food is more nutritious, it's better food than what you're going to get at a fast food joint somewhere. And it's expensive enough, eating out is expensive enough, so you're really not going to get anywhere. Just, working day jobs, and there's temp services that'll pay you per day, which helps. But it's hard to get around that logistics issue. The other thing is that as soon as you set up services, the city next door is going to say, well, we don't have any services like that. Let's send them over there where they have services where they can get some help. That is the first thing they're going to do. And so you're just going to make it worse on yourself. So now they're at a point where they don't care. It's not only that, but if you start allowing people to set up, like there are people who genuinely need some help. Something happened. Maybe they got robbed. Maybe they got all their school books stolen and this, thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and changed the course of their life because of one robbery. Maybe they left their stuff in the car. I've seen that happen. I used to live in college housing, and they were, a couple was out there crying outside of their door. It's not that their laptop got stolen. They got equipment, books. When you go to school, sometimes there's some really, really expensive stuff that you lose there. So it makes it harder on the people who are genuinely in a place, maybe there's a natural disaster and they were, somebody broke into their home and assaulted them. That does happen, and they end up out on the streets because there's really nowhere. You don't really have good options, and that's not really the city's fault. It's just the way it is. Well, it's again, you build up services and then you attract people who make it harder on other people who are in that situation. There was a time in Portland. You saw signs up everywhere, not yours, do not take this. And it's like the whole homeless population was stealing each other's shit. It was kind of funny. I mean, it was bad, but there are people who, they popped a tent up because they need a place to sleep so they can go to work. And there are people who go to school and sleep in their car. I slept in my car while I was going to school. I was lucky enough to have a car, and that just makes it impossible, even harder for them, is by allowing this sort of thing. So when you start sweeps, which is just taking people's stuff and throwing it in the grass, you're gonna make things harder for people, especially the elderly. Like that's the most expensive. Even if you help them out, they're old. They're, what are they gonna do? Go to college, start a new life, raise some more kids that they're 70, 80 years old. What are they going to do? So you're not going to get any return on your investment when you help them out. So I think now it's just like people's lives are their own, and you have to keep the city clean. But it's not Portland specifically. When they decriminalized drug use, everybody looked at him and said, what the fuck are you doing? But before that happened, we didn't have a perfect system. You've got people who, incarcerating somebody doesn't stop them from doing drugs. They just meet more people to get more drugs from in jail, and they get drugs in jail. So when they get out, they're far behind. Technology has left them behind. They don't know how things work. They don't know what their options are. And they're used to structure in jail. They get out and they have no structure. It's just not. It's not a perfect system. So when they decriminalized it, they changed some things, and then things got really bad because of the pandemic. It wasn't just because of that. And then some of the things they kept, like we still have these safe area shelter areas set up where people who have nowhere else to go, they're not living on the streets. They're not. Another thing that happens when they're not safe is they'll start doing more meth to stay awake so they don't get messed with when they're asleep, because someone will mess with you. They'll wait till nobody's looking and do something bad. Take your stuff, whatever it is you worked for that day, you're going to lose it. So safe rest villages, that's what we have here. So we've tried some things, we've learned from our mistakes, and now we've settled into this kind of equilibrium. But being a dumping ground for people that other countries don't want, that is an issue. I just don't have the statistics on how bad of an issue it is. And I've been told that you hear online, like, well, people here are more likely to commit crimes. Um, there is no point in letting everyone know that they can send those people, even if it's a small problem. Like, there's no point in letting them know that they can do that, because it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's not going to reach some equilibrium. It's just going to get worse, because there's a lot of people in the world. And transportation is getting better. It's going to get easier for them to move them over here. Routes are going to get established. It's already become the norm. So that the whole process of getting them over here is going to be more efficient, become more efficient the more it happens. You have to shut that down. So now, what I think is happening is he sees some problems. He knows that he can get in by solving these problems, and some of them are pretty easy to solve. You just have to stop listening to everyone talk. And yeah, eventually you're going to find out who he really is. And it's happened with other countries. I think, who was it we went after in the Middle East? And the story is he said, okay, I'm going to build schools, I'm going to do all these things for you, but do not touch my sons. And his sons, one of them was doing some really, really bad shit to people. And I don't know, maybe there's going to be some kind of price to pay for letting somebody like Trump come in and just railroad everybody and give us hope. Anyways, Portland, Oregon, there haven't been any riots or anything yet. I think LA there was. I don't know if there's really riots in LA. Everybody was really calm at first, and then at night it got a little crazy or something. But anyways, riots. I shouldn't have said riots. They weren't riots. There were people just out there with Mexican flags. I think it was just Mexican flags. That's another thing. It's like, if you've been to LA and you hear somebody say, we're going to deport all the Mexicans, because that's what they're worried about is going to happen eventually. It's like, that's all of LA. Like, it's going to be it's going to be a fucking ghost town. It's not, like, do you realize how many Mexicans are here? Oh shit. Like, there are more of them than there are of us. So I don't know if that's true, but I actually heard a Native American guy, he was selling jerky at this rest stop, and he was like, man, I was with this nonprofit, and he was talking about it, and he was like, man, you're letting people from Mexico do the exact same thing to you that you did to us. Like, there's a lot of hungry people out there, a lot of hardworking people, a lot of fucked up people, lots of different kinds of people, and they all want something, and this is the land of opportunity, Anyways, do what you will, harm no one, harm nothing. Yeah.